Hello book people, PT here. I started writing a new novel yesterday and I thought it would be fun to start a little bit of a series where each week I kind of check in and talk about a different writing topic. So I've noticed when I'm writing novels, I tend to experience a lot of emotional peaks and valleys, and they kind of tend to be at the same points. And I think there's a lot of struggles that are common when you're writing a novel, at least for me, at different stages. Whenever you see writing a book or a screenplay or a story or whatever in movies, it's usually just like a montage with a lot of typing, maybe a little pacing, a little crumpling of papers. But I want to take a little more in-depth look, kind of a real-time look at how I'm doing throughout this period. And each week I'll talk about a little writing topic. So this week I want to talk about the concept of the idea behind a book. The idea is, the thing that you're thinking about that makes you write the book. It's the thing that when someone says, "What's it about?" you say in a couple sentences. It's the idea for the book. Sometimes it's more fleshed out than others. But today I'm going to talk about two ways that I think the idea is misunderstood by non-writers. Two reasons that I think it is very important. And finally, I'll tell you what the idea for the book that I'm working on is. First of all, I think a lot of non-writers think the idea is the hard part. I think writers often get the question, like, where do you get your ideas? I know that I've had a few people come up to me when they know that I'm a writer and say, look, I've got this idea for this novel. I don't have time to do it, so I'm going to tell it to you, and here you go. And they act like they're doing you this huge favor. And the idea that they give you is always like something pretty high level, like a woman's husband is kidnapped and she has to fight to get him back, which could be a great book. That could be a good book, could be a terrible book. But coming up with the idea, for me at least, is not the hard part. The hard part is sitting in the chair each day and writing it. That's the hard part. The ideas part's pretty easy, and I do think coming up with ideas, when people ask how do you get your ideas, I do think that coming up with ideas is a skill and a muscle that you can work and get better at, and the way you get better at it is by writing, because once you start thinking about story more and more, you just start seeing stories more in different parts of the world. That's kind of the first way that I think ideas are misunderstood, is that people think that that's the hard part. The second reason is I think a lot of non-writers think it's the important part. Like the sense that I always get from those people, like I've mentioned, who said, oh, here's this great idea, so they're doing me this huge favor. I did the hard part, coming up with this great idea. Now all you have to do is just go put down the words or whatever. When it turns out that if you give that same idea to 100 writers, you're going to end up with 100 very different books, some of which might be very good, some of which might be very bad, all depending on the writer. So the idea itself is not the most important part. Admittedly, in a more idea-driven genre like science fiction, it is more important, of course, than in literary fiction or something like that. But even still, a great writer can take a mundane idea and make it special, and a bad writer could take the best idea of all time and make it terrible. It's not the important part, and it's not the hard part. Now I'm going to flip-flop on that and tell you two reasons I think the idea is super important. First of all, the idea is very important, especially at this stage, at the beginning, when I'm just starting the book, because it's the thing that gets me to sit down in the chair and do it. I have to be excited enough about it that it makes me want to write. And eventually that's going to wane a little bit, and I'm going to be more excited about the characters and more excited about the specifics of where the story's going. But that idea has to be kind of like the spark that lights the fire under me to get me going. So I don't care as much about whether the idea is the most unique or the thing that you think is the most exciting. If I were to tell it to you, the most important thing is that I think it's super exciting and that it gets my brain firing and makes me want to sit down and write. So that's at the beginning. The other reason the idea is very important is that it's going to be very important at the end, right? Because I don't know what I'm going to do with this particular novel yet. I don't know if I'm going to try to get an agent and try to sell it to a publisher, or if I'm going to self-publish it. But either way, whether I'm pitching it to agents or I'm pitching it to the public trying to sell it, that idea is kind of what you use to sell it, right? And that's the idea that you give. Now that idea might change throughout the course of the novel, but being able to articulate that idea by the end, well, is how you're going to sell that book. So here's the idea for my book. There's this scientist who is trying to build this device, and she's been trying to build it for years, and it's going to take a lot of money to get there. So in order to get the funds to build this device, she's compromised morally and helped some bad people do some bad things. The justification, though, in her mind is that she's building this device that she knows can help the world in specific ways, and she has very specific things she wants to do with this device to really help the world. So although she's done some bad things to get here, in her mind is justified, because once she has this device, she's going to be able to make everything right. When she finally finishes the device, though, some very powerful, very bad people immediately take it away from her. And they use it in some very bad ways that really mess with the world in ways that she could not have even thought of. Now, along with the ragtag group of other people who also hate these bad guys, she is going to have to use some very limited resources and a very limited amount of time to get the device back from the bad guys and to undo what they've done to the world. By the way, the device that she created is a time machine. So there you go. That is the idea, the basic kernel of an idea for the book that I'm working on. From that basic idea, could be a good book, it could be a bad book. That's what we're going to find out in the coming weeks as I continue to work on it. Again, though, the main thing is that it's got me excited, and it's enough to get me to sit down in front of that keyboard and write what I think is going to be a very cool sci-fi time travel adventure story. Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you next week. Bye.